Yeah.
I am
Never
Bill
mind.
Webster, aka Zazubaar, and welcome to the Demons from Outer Space, episode 111. You have to say all the ones individually, otherwise it doesn't make sense. Dylan McCandless, Super DM 64, is here with me.
Is it 111? Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm almost positive.
Damn.
I was looking at the list earlier. I was editing a new series we're working on. Which, you know what, I'll announce that up front, actually, before we get into the review proper, if you don't mind. We're working on a new Palooza-esque series in preparation for the upcoming release of War for the Planet of the Apes. It's called Talking Apes. Guess what it's about? We're doing commentaries on all of the Planet of the Apes films leading up to the release of War. All the classic stuff, 2001, the two reboot movies that we have access to, and then we're going to obviously go see War and do that on SOS when we get the chance. So,
Yeah, so if you enjoyed our Week of Kong and you like apes, then definitely check that out.
yeah, it's
However,
a sequel to that in every way.
However, if you hated our Week of Kong and you hate apes, then I guess don't.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't really seem like it's going to work out well for you then. I mean, you can give it a go. I advise you to give it a go. Give us a view. But, you know, I'm not going to hold a grudge if you don't stick around. So, if you are sticking around with us...
the video and click off. That works well for us.
If you are sticking around with us, though, we're going to start that. I believe... I looked this up earlier. I had it ready to go. I believe it's July 7th is the day that'll begin, because I do believe that the movie comes out on the 21st. I'm almost positive. Oh no, on the 14th. Excuse me. I'm almost positive that it comes out on the 14th. I'm gonna double check that though real quick, because I looked that up mad earlier when I was not working, and then I worked a 9-hour shift in between. So God knows what happened to that memory. Let's see. Yeah, July 14th. I had that right. So exactly a week prior. In fact, the first episode might actually go up on the 6th, because we have 8 commentaries, and we want these to... I'd like to put them all up the day before the movies. That way everybody gets the chance to listen to them and watch the movie with the commentary before the thing comes out and before they have to go see it in the theater. Like, watching the last movie and then going to see it in the theater on the same day might not be realistic for some people, so we'll accommodate that by putting it up the day prior. So that's pretty much it. Dylan, are you excited?
I better be. We're about halfway through now.
Yeah, if you give up now, I mean, fuck. What am I gonna do with? I mean, Brayton literally just edited an intro and got us an awesome title card. So, are you really just gonna make me throw that away for nothing? Yeah. So it's happening. We hope you're enjoying the commentary format, because that's kind of something we're gonna keep doing with all the franchises that we want to discuss. Doing reviews outside of podcasts is not something that I enjoy doing anymore, by and large. So, with very rare exception. So, supplanting that, we're going to do the commentaries, which I enjoy much more, and I think there's more value to. So, we're going to keep doing it that way from now on.
We've even already had a conversation about what to do after Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, we can get into that some other time. I want to talk about some Marvel shit.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say it now. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, so fucking let that whet your appetite. So, now to get into the main course, that was the appetizer. Let's get into the main course now. So we're going to talk about a comic book tonight. A comic book that is fascinating to me, because Marvel Comics we talk about a lot on the show. We've been reviewing the X-Men movies for quite some time. We reviewed the first 4 of them. And we also recently reviewed the Incredible Hulk pilot from 1977. You and I have long established our Marvel fandoms.
Yes, it's my favorite comic book universe, even though my
Me too.
favorite comic book character is Batman.
My 2 favorite comic book characters are Batman... I hate having this conversation every time somebody drags me into it. I like the Hulk above all, but Batman and Superman are my 2 favorite superheroes. And then, yeah, the Marvel Universe and every other character falls in after that.
Yeah, for me it's like Batman and anything associated with Batman, then Marvel, and then the rest of the shit.
That's pretty much... I can align to that line of thinking by and large as well. But the Marvel Universe is what I really got into first, comic book wise. I started reading Marvel comics when I was very young, around when the first Spider-Man movie came out, and that was an obvious in for me. Started with Spider-Man, of course, and just coincidentally around the same time that all of us kids were interested in getting into Spider-Man when this movie came out, Marvel rebooted the character in a different universe in a modern day context, with more grounded, darker, kind of grittier roots, but with all the proper Spider-Man-esque trappings that would befit Stan Lee's blessing, which all of the Ultimate books have on the front of them. With Ultimate Spider-Man, that was the first book that Marvel attached their Ultimate title to. Ultimate being the key word we're going to be discussing tonight. So Dylan, I want to ask you: were you one of us kids who got into the Ultimate Marvel Universe when it started, or what's your exposure with that?
I didn't read all of it. I read very select bits of it. I read some Ultimate Spider-Man back in the day, and I read some Ultimate X-Men. None of it like really consistently, just kind of on and off. I was never really consistently following comic books anyway. It was
the
always
covers were always amazing, and that was always their biggest strong suit when you were going through the shelf. Because otherwise,
I wish they all did the big solid band of color on the side. But
and they always had the logos really prominently. They were very good at advertising like simplicity with quality. That was always their. That was always, I feel, their brandish, especially with their aesthetic. We'll talk about it a lot with what we're reviewing tonight. The original Ultimates run. It doesn't have a lot of captions. There's not a lot of blocks of text. It's a lot of visual storytelling. And all of the Ultimate books really stuck with that, with very rare exception. And when they deviated, it was not good. So we'll talk about that more, though. So you read Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men. Okay, I've read Ultimate Spider-Man a lot. Again, covers were a big thing for me. The Ultimate Venom trade made me want to, fucking read everything that ever had Venom in it, regardless if it was good. I got really into the character at that point, but that storyline was awesome. I really like that version of it.
I've got that trade. I think it's the only trade from the Ultimate Universe that I have. Ultimate Spider-Man Volume. What was it? 10? Or
the number? I think it's earlier than that actually, but I could be wrong.
Okay, it might be like 5 or something. I don't know.
I have to get back into Ultimate Spider-Man. I haven't yet. I have literally dabbled into every other Ultimate reboot of a major character. I've read all of Ultimate Fantastic Four, which is consistently pretty good. The first half of it is amazing, and then the last third of it is just okay. Okay, so to the point though, tonight the other thing that I read, we are going to be talking about the Ultimates, the Mark Millar and Brian Hitch series. That this one's a little more interesting, a little more complicated. I think this and Ultimate Spider-Man are really the ones that stand out, and Ultimate X-Men as well. Ultimate X-Men predates the Ultimates. This was the third one that they did.
Well, they even mention some events from Ultimate X-Men. Yeah,
the X-Men side of things and the Spider-Man side of things were the only things that were really consistent in this universe prior to the Ultimates and prior to everything else they did after that. The Fantastic Four, all of the Avengers, all had different Ultimate kind of flourishes depending on where they showed up. Although usually Brian Michael Bendis was the only one writing, and he would just kind of do his version of it. And then when they did them later, they had to kind of go, well, this is my version, but just forget about that and let's move on,
Yeah.
The Hulk, it works because they already established that he has a different origin, so that was okay. And it's vague, and he just kind of just shows up and is the Hulk, so that works. He looks different and acts different from what we'll see here, though. We'll talk about that. But the Ultimates is the thing that really went, okay, this is the groundwork. This is everything that does an Ultimate. Every Marvel character that has an Ultimate title on it, this is the HUD that you have to return to go, how do I do it? So this is the Avengers one, but it's a little more complicated than that.
It's really interesting to me that they came up with a new name for this one. They didn't just call it Ultimate Avengers.
Well, they did that later. It's completely different than what you would expect, though. It's also by Mark Millar, and it's also pretty good. but not as good as this is. But you know, it's still rather solid. So the Ultimate Universe is very different from 616, and one of the differences is the approach, and often the where the powers and why the powers are given to people and created, and why the accidents happen. All that's different from 616. And in the inception of it, often it's darker in its connotation. It's less benevolently motivated. And I feel the Ultimates is kind of it's the prime example of that, because it's very different from the comics, where the Avengers were just, hey, we've all got superpowers and we could all lend a hand. Let's all come together to stop Loki. That was the Avengers. And the movie sort of mixes that with what the Ultimates does, which is Nick Fury is like, well, no, Nick Fury has always been like, I want a bunch of superheroes paid by me, controlled by me, that I can send wherever to kick ass. And one day Tony Stark is on the top of Mount Everest and is like, I'm in. Let me go public as Iron Man and do this. And put all my money into S.H.I.E.L.D. backing and make the Ultimates happen. He comes up. I'm pretty sure he comes up with the name as well, because I'm pretty sure he comes up with the whole advertising campaign. And that is the inception of the Ultimates in the Ultimate Universe. And obviously it's the Avengers, because it's Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Giant Man / Ant-Man, Wasp, Nick Fury, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, all of the mainstays of the Avengers that you go, oh, okay, this is an Avengers thing. So there's so many directions that we can go to kind of start with, but let me just start with the simple question. Did you like it, D? Oh, well, okay. First, have you read this particular run before, or anything from it?
No. I was aware of some of the things that go on in it, but I never actually sat down and read it myself. The closest I ever came was I saw that animated movie that they did.
Ultimate
I think
Avengers,
that was just called Ultimate. Yeah, which is very loosely based on this.
Very loosely, and it's not nearly as good. But it's not bad. It's just kind of. It's this, but it's more of like, well, this is a superhero thing for not kids, but for younger people. So, we'll bear that in mind.
It's the Ultimate Universe through like a 616 lens, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's the best way. That's an even better way to describe it than what I say, because there's definitely dark adult stuff in it, but it's more like the movies. I would say it's closer to even a movie, like an MCU counterpart.
Yeah.
Because the MCU is I think you'll agree after reading this, a very clever mix of 616 and Ultimate.
Oh yeah. There's a ton of carryover. Some of it kind of bizarre and interesting. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. But especially some of the stuff that comes from this, because of how different the characters are. But so yeah, let's get to the big question then. Did you like it?
I did. Yeah. I know a lot of people don't like it, and
it's very polarizing.
I can see why.
Yeah, I can definitely see why I can see why this kind of thing is not for everybody, without question.
I think people are turned off of this for the same reason that a lot of people are turned off of like Ben Affleck's Batman.
Yeah, but that's a different thing. See, it's
a similar problem though. People are like, I don't know if I want the Avengers to be assholes, and I'm like, yeah, but
don't you think that this makes more sense than that though? From the level of like why they are that way and how they operate, like and because Ben Affleck's Batman, I just don't understand how that works, because he's a monster. He's a terrorist, like basically. The Ultimates, yes, they all have massive personality flaws that clash badly, catastrophically, but I still understand how they work and how they all came together to be in that position, and how they all come to where they come to the decisions that they do following the bad stuff that happens and why they got to the bad places that they got to. I don't feel that way with Ben Affleck's Batman or even Henry Cavill's Superman.
Well, no, Henry Cavill Superman definitely not, but I think they hinted, enough at why Batman's fucked up at this point in the timeline to where it didn't bother me.
I don't think it's just that he's fucked up. I think it's just that he's been so fucked up for so long and nobody's addressing it.
Yeah,
that's more of the thing I don't get about Ben Affleck's Batman. The Ultimates,
that's
get.
Why we needed that one little. That's why we needed that one little shot in BVS where he looks off and you see the Jason Todd Robin suit. Because at that moment in the theater, I was like, gotcha. He's gone off the deep end. This is a Doctor Who with no companion situation.
Yeah, but it's way worse than that, though. Like, why are we talking about Batman? This is an Ultimate Marvel review, and I was so excited to do this. But I just don't think that works nearly as much as this does. Like, for instance, just to give a specific example, Bruce Banner is great in this. Now, I am a big Hulk fan. I love 616 Bruce Banner and Hulk. Well, 616 Bruce Banner, it depends on the arc. And that's the thing, 616 Bruce Banner is a mess. Like, nobody knows what the fuck to do with him half the time because he's either a complete dick, a total nothing character, or he's kind of more based on the TV show version. He's a little more sarcastic based on the later versions or whatever. So it definitely depends. What I think Mark Millar decided to do was go, okay, if I'm going to do the Hulk in a modern day context, in the context of this Marvel universe I'm rebooting here, what am I going to do? What would make sense? This makes sense. It's very interesting, and it plays out in a very dramatic and compelling way. And the way it rings out in the rest of the Ultimate Universe later, in the sequel to this and all the other stuff, it's all really really effective. How did you feel about Bruce Banner, as an example of that? Do you think that worked?
What worked?
The
exactly.
Darker, more, he's not an asshole, but he's unhinged psychologically and dangerously so, and has severe, kind of personality issues and insecurities. That was all ambiguous with 616 Banner, and very much so in the background while he was just a scientist. He was a kind of a nerdy scientist just fighting aliens and shit. It's all about those personality flaws. So did you think that worked, or did you find him just completely like, oh my god, they took Bruce Banner and made him just into a total just a monster of a man outside of being the Hulk?
No, I think Banner is done well. Now, we kind of have to separate the two here, but I think Banner is done very well. I do
really? All right. Well, we can get... You know what? Fuck it. We'll talk about it now. You don't like the Hulk?
Not that I don't like him. It's just a weird version of the Hulk.
Yes. I forgot about... I didn't even think about the Hulk. I thought that you might have problems with the Hulk. Because of what they do with it, and I'm using him as an example because I think that it's an example of that it doesn't, like, the changes that they make for the darker and grittier and for all that whatever. Yes, it's bizarre, but the reasoning for it and the context of it, I think, totally works. Like, yes, this is not 616. He just wants to be left alone. Strongest there is Hulk. This is the dark side of a very troubled man's personality with incredible strength and regenerative capabilities. Just the worst biological thing ever. And he's a monster, and he behaves as such. You don't like the eating people thing, do you?
No, it's not even the eating people thing.
Oh, okay. That's usually where people draw the line. I don't mind the eating people thing. I think it's problematic later when they try to make him more like the 616 version, where he's more of like a anti-hero. And it's like, well, why is he not eating people anymore?
I'm fine with him eating people and threatening to violently rape Betty Ross, whatever.
Yeah, I think that all totally works, especially in this context.
The thing is, I think there's a bit of inconsistency. Like, I don't get how intelligent he's supposed to be. You know what I mean?
No, that I totally get, and I'll tell you why. I think it's one of the reasons I think this is one of the better interpretations of the Hulk that consistently works for me, because it is all over the place, because it should be. he's Bruce Banner, who's a genius, but a dark, twisted, problematic genius who his brain is troubled by a million different things. And he's supercharged on not gamma radiation, on this drug that has just ramped up his brain and his body's processes to a million times. So it's kind of like a kind of high and low effect of like a speed or any kind of drug, where it's kind of depending on the context of what he's saying and what he's trying to express and how he's feeling in that particular moment. That depends on how that depends on how intelligent he comes across. Think about how Bruce Banner acts on his own anyway. It's kind of an interesting parallel. Like sometimes he comes across as a total with it genius, and then other times he's just like this weird, antisocial, just fucking idiot, you know? So I think that's interesting.
It's just weird though, because traditionally the Hulk and Banner are kind of two separate people living in the same body, you know, or at least
That
that's the way it kind of
see. That's one of the things that changes, and that's not how this works at all. Even though Bruce likes to think it is.
In this, it seems to be that the Hulk is more an expression of things that Banner wants, especially when he's like ranting about, that's Banner's girlfriend, give me Banner's girlfriend.
All he gives a fuck about is what he's supposed to be fucking. And it's perfect because whenever something else offers itself up to him, he's like, oh yeah, okay, I'm onto that now. Fuck Betty Ross. And that totally works.
And that's fine, and if that's your concept of what the Hulk's going to be in this universe, fine, I can get behind that. But then every now and then it's like writing wise, he'll go back to being the dumb Hulk, you know, the fucking Hulk smash. And I'm like, okay, well, make up your mind. Is he going to be the Hulk who's
Does he actually say Hulk smash in this?
He doesn't say Hulk smash exactly, but I'm saying
because Betty Ross like quotes him as saying that later when he's locked up in the cell, and she's like, "Oh, Mr. Hulk smash over here," and you know it's like this little dark, you know, morbid joke. Obviously, like that's the thing. Whenever they talk about the Hulk in any kind of humorous way, it's like it's very like morbid because of what he is in this universe. So, Mark Millar's whole concept.
I feel like writing wise, they kind of. It's like they're going for this idea of the Hulk being, you know, a little bit more eloquent. He strings together much longer sentences than the traditional.
He's more like a Frankenstein monster in Mary Shelley's book. You know, depending on the chapter, obviously.
Yeah, but then every now and then it'll like regress into more of the traditional like fucking stupid Hulk, and I'm like, well, okay, what you were doing before is really interesting, and this is really interesting, but you gotta make up your mind.
I will agree with you that I think one of this book's biggest problems, and this is just one of the things in the Ultimate Universe that just became an issue because they just started doing a lot more of it, is consistency. I think it exists in this series as well, although part of the problem as well is that these took forever to come out. Like, thank God we're doing this 15 years after it started. So we're good. We have the whole series. You know, and I've read the 2 sequels and everything else. So, you know, I'm covered on all that. But at the time, there were months and months and months, and you know I think maybe there was even a point where it was a year between issues. And that inconsistency shows. One of the ones that pops out to me still is Hawkeye. He clearly was supposed to be a different thing before you get to the issue late in the run where him and Black Widow just become a thing. Which is a great issue. I love that issue a lot, especially art-wise. It's incredible. But early on, Betty Ross is like, "Oh, our Olympic archer who was supposed to join, his girlfriend could only get this week off to go on vacation, so he's not here for the press meeting or whatever the hell it was." And I'm like, okay, so they're kind of playing off Hawkeye. It's always he's an Olympic archer, and he probably still has that in his background. But clearly, like that was supposed to be like where he came from completely in that context, because they were kind of scrambling to get people together initially. That was the idea anyway.
The way that's stated in that issue makes it seem as though he's never been a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. before. It made it seem as though they've just recruited this Olympic archer.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Then when you get to him later, he's clearly been a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent for some time.
Well, they could now. To be fair as well, none of the Ultimates have top secret clearance at that point, because this is pre the invasion. And once they get to the invasion, they know everything, quote unquote. But
But it said the Olympic archer line wasn't
Yeah,
it?
no,
Like,
I don't think it was intended that way at the time, but I think you can interpret it that way now, given that we know that that's not how it was. That's not true, because Hawkeye has been employed by Shield from the start. And I mean, there's also a line later where Nick Fury is like, they're going to be put on public duty with you guys, but we're going to have to falsify their backgrounds first because Black Widow is mostly the same in this version, except she's also a Russian super soldier. So she worked for the KGB and now she works for Shield, so that's all the same. And Hawkeye, I love Ultimate Hawkeye, and Clint Barton in the movies is mostly Ultimate Hawkeye, almost to the letter. Would you agree?
Yes, but with more hair. Yes,
with more hair. He gets more hair later in the Ultimate Universe, though, and it's not as good. I like him. I like the way he looks early on. I think that makes more sense. He has one of my favorite bits in the entire series where him and Natasha are clearing those two skyscrapers full of Chitauri sleeper agents, and Natasha's like bullshitting with him over the fucking microphone, and he's literally like, Natasha, shut the fuck up. I can't talk while I'm doing stuff like this. I'm not enhanced like you are. I need quiet while I work. I loved that.
I feel like they should have. I feel like they probably should have explained that the people in those office buildings were Chitauri sleeper agents.
They did. I agree with you. That was confusing because
it
just kind of seems like they're killing people for no reason.
They very vaguely say, "Oh, they're sleeper agents," but they didn't really explain the whole Chitauri thing until later on in the run. And I knew they were talking about Chitauri because I was, vaguely aware of where the series was going to go. Again, having seen the animated movie and having known some things about the Ultimate Universe before reading it. So I knew where they were going, but I could only imagine somebody in 2002 who had no idea what was coming, and then maybe they were kind of on the fence about whether they liked it because all the characters are assholes, and they'd pick up this one issue and just Hawkeye and Black Widow seem to murder like 2 buildings worth of civilians, and they're like, maybe I'm done,
So that's obviously that seems to be your big takeaway is that it's a version of the Marvel Universe that's more grounded, it's more gritty, so all the characters are kind of they're dicks to a certain respect. Which ones do you think most exemplify that, and which ones do you think least exemplify that?
I don't even necessarily know if I would say that they're all dicks.
I agree with you. I don't think that they. I think that. I think you can kind of argue for 2 of them.
I think that's what the people who don't like.
That I see your point. Yeah,
it would say, and I would agree in certain instances. I think they're just supposed to be portrayed more realistically, and that's sometimes done very well and sometimes not so well. Depending.
Give me a not so well one.
Well, like I didn't care that much about hippie Thor. He seemed really stereotypically.
Oh no, I love that, but okay.
I like the concept of it. I don't know if it's handled so well.
What, did you like that he just didn't seem to be doing anything? Because I think that's kind of intentional. He's kind of waiting for something to make him go, oh, all right, yeah, I should use this big scary hammer I have.
He's kind of, stereotypically like a hippie, like a protester guy. And it comes off kind of like I've seen this before. You know what I mean?
Okay. Did you read that as him putting on an act?
No.
Well, I did, and I've read other stuff now, so I do interpret it that way because he is mostly.
And see, this ties into another thing about this particular run.
Yeah.
I was going to say the whole Thor hippie thing kind of goes into a little bit of what they're doing. There's a bit of social commentary going on here.
Oh, a bit.
That I'm sure was very cutting edge in 2002, but now it really dates it.
Well, this whole thing is dated, and I think that also is not gonna. I don't think anybody can pick up and read this. I don't think it's the into the Marvel Universe that it was at the time.
I mean, it's weird. You would think that it wouldn't be this way, but for me, something like this comes across more dated than something from like the fucking Silver Age, because that's made to be kind of timeless, and this is very of the time. You know what I mean? reading it the whole time, you're very aware of like, oh well, this is the Bush. I mean, Bush shows up at one point.
I
Like,
mean, no, it's our world pretty much. It's just it's an alternate Marvel version of our world. So there are super soldiers, and Captain America won World War II for us, and there was aliens and all that, and there are mutants and Spider-Man and the Hulk and everything, and Iron Man and Tony Stark, and Tony Stark built the internet and all that. But it's our world. It's President Bush. I love that. See, you don't think that that's cool? I think that that's cool that we have a version of that where they're just like, all right, here's the president at the time.
I mean, sure. I'm just
saying,
saying,
literally just show him and just have him talk to Captain America. I
that's
love
fine.
that.
That's fine, and I understand the merits of doing that. And they've done that before. In comics, occasionally, Superman might talk to Obama or whatever the fuck.
That's always super safe, though. I mean, it's not like Captain America tells him to go fuck himself. But I'm just saying, like, that's always like, oh, because it's in like a continuity thing. Like, they know it's gonna make news headlines and shit. But the way it's done here, it's just as if this happens. So here, we have to show it this way. Like, it's a comic book. This is the way story is told.
Yeah,
it's like Nixon popping up in Watchmen.
I'm saying that for me, see, Watchmen, that's a different scenario because that's a period piece, so it's supposed to be conveying
it wasn't a period piece at the time.
That's true. That's true. You're right. I'm thinking of that through the.
That's what I'm saying. See, this is Watchmen, except it's what I think. I don't think it's as good as Watchmen. And I think it had every right to be. It could have very easily been as good as. I might actually enjoy it more than Watchmen. If I had to pick up and read one again, I'd definitely pick this one. But I think it had every right to be as good as Watchmen if the production schedule and the way Marvel puts out books and the way this book was put together had not gotten in the way of its production. It could have been as good as Watchmen. But there were production deadlines and a bunch of other stuff that Marvel's trying to do, and this whole other universe they're trying to use to sell their characters to movie companies. Because that's also what this is. This is also them going, hey, here's how you make an Avengers movie, and that's what they kind of do later.
I'm fine with it when it's just like a celebrity of the time showing up.
See, I don't like the Freddie Prinze Jr. thing even as much as I do the Bush thing. I think that's even like because who the fuck is going to know who Freddie Prinze Jr. is in 10 years?
Anyone who's seen the Scooby-Doo movies, obviously. No,
yeah, all the people in 10 years who are going to remember that fondly. Sure, you're right.
My only problem with the Freddie Prinze Jr. thing is the Hulk saying Hulk want Freddie Prinze Jr. Maybe the worst line ever written for the Hulk.
I want that tattooed on my body, actually.
No, but see, it's less egregious to me when it's just like, oh, a celebrity pops up or something. Then it is like when it's the social commentary that is a problem because it just dates the piece a lot.
You don't enjoy it? I do. I think it's
again. I'm sure it was very cutting edge in 2002.
See, I think I should have said this up front. This is maybe a bit of a guilt. Again, I think this is good. I think this is solid. I think if you're I think if you like Marvel, I think you should definitely try this at the very least because it's just an interesting direction for these characters, in my opinion, and it puts them into a different, interesting context that I think is worth exploring. But, it is a bit of a guilty pleasure for me in the sense of I'm willing to ignore almost any and all issues with the fact that it's not timeless at all. It's wrought with of the time social commentary and references because it's so nostalgic for me, and it brings me right back to that time when I was a kid first getting back into Marvel, and this was all not dated and it was still happening. You know what I mean? Like when 9/11 had just happened and all that, and then this was all still fresh in our minds. Like this was a thing to behold. So,
did you notice that after the issue where Nick Fury said that Sam Jackson should play him in a movie, suddenly they started drawing him even more like Sam Jackson than they had before?
That is distracting, and I think that they should have stopped that and they do at a certain point. I don't know if it's in this run. I think it's actually in Ultimates 2 where they stop doing it. He's just kind of a generic Sam Jackson-esque dude. But not Sam Jackson as he was in this. He's literally just Sam Jackson in the series.
Well, their line has always been, we based him off Sam Jackson.
They did. No,
Okay,
that's true, but they had to mask it later because people were like, he could very easily sue you, so tread lightly. And I think they were like, all right, well, it's not worth it. And then later they just got lucky that they cast him.
what I'm saying is, though, they've always said that they based it off of Sam Jackson, but they didn't start off drawing him that like he when he pops up in Ultimate Spider-Man. Sure, his character has sort of a Sam Jackson persona, but he's not literally drawn like Sam Jackson. And then there are moments in this where he's looking at the camera, and I'm like, holy shit, whoever drew this does a great Sam Jackson.
There's no tracing moments either. They're you can oftentimes tell when that's a thing. Like if you read the Star Wars series that Jason Aaron wrote from a couple years, I think it's like a year back now. There are some moments in that where it's like they clearly traced over particular moments from the original trilogy to get that actor's likeness right for that particular moment, like because they're in similar situations, and that's no good to me because I know exactly where they're pulling from. Like, oh yeah, that's when Obi-Wan died. Okay, yeah, I remember that. But in this, I can't like go, oh, they're tracing that. Like I can't tell. Tony Stark is very clearly supposed to be Johnny Depp. Like I mean that they talk about that, and it's not as obvious early on. Early on, he's kind of just, oh, this is Tony Stark, but he's a little more rugged looking. He's a little more kind of modern day millionaire type.
Well, I think that's terrible casting.
No, I'm with you. That is terrible casting. But they do start to draw him that way later, and I think that's when I start to go, oh, I miss when he looked rugged, and because he's beefy in the Ultimate Universe, and I like that, because I think I don't think that many versions of Iron Man really emphasize like, yeah, he's a nerdy dude who operates a mechanical suit to win superhero fights. But to move around in that armor it has to require a certain physicality, It's like NASCAR drivers. People think, oh, they just sit there all day. No. It requires physicality to drive a car for that long, that fast, and that far.
Yeah, I mean, they have to, like, reach for, like, the gear shift. Ugh.
Yeah. No, but just being in a machine, doing that, handling those forces, it absolutely requires a physicality. And especially Iron Man, where it's not just you're sitting there, it's you're standing there, and then you have to move along with the suit. And the suit's going to move for you to a certain degree, but you have to put all the movement into making it move,
It's kind of interesting that they were pushing this whole, Iron Man's based on Johnny Depp thing, horrible casting as that may be. But at one point early on in the series, in the run, and this made me laugh so hard because it's so unintentional, clearly just because of the way time works. They make a joke early on at Robert Downey Jr.'s expense.
Yeah, well, clearly it's like, oh, there's no intention of that being taken in that vein. Well, I also thought that was a weird moment.
Well, this is obviously Downey Jr.'s career was.
This is Downey Jr. post fucking what's that show called? The lawyer one, the Robert Kelly show, whatever that was called.
Anyway, his career was still in the toilet at the time, obviously, and they make a joke about it, and it's just funny because of how things wound up happening.
Yeah.
I wonder if he ever read this for research.
See, I know he's read a lot of old Iron Man stuff. I don't. Clearly, Joss Whedon has read this.
Oh yeah, very clearly.
Clearly, the people who made the Incredible Hulk have read this. Clearly, the people who made Captain America: The First Avenger have read this.
Well, the people who run the MCU in general, the Chitauri in this pretty much do the exact same thing that Hydra wound up doing in the MCU.
It's a mix. It's a mix of. The battle is more like the end of the first Avengers movie. The story is more like Winter Soldier. How did you feel about that? Did you think that popped up too late in the game, or did you think that was, oh wow, all right, this is happening, interesting?
Yeah, that was really interesting to me because I knew about the Captain America thing. Again, this was one of the things that was covered and adapted in the animated film. Again, that's very loose, but that is one thing that they kept was this whole idea of the Chitauri helping the Nazis in World War II, and then coming back later for funsies. But the idea of them then going underground and kind of infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D., and I'm like, wait a minute, this is exactly what they did with Hydra in the MCU. Very interesting.
And also, they've been manipulating Shield for a while. It's not like they just started. Like this has been going, and they're like feeding water with like fucking thought numbing drugs and stuff. And they also have put stuff in smartphones to make people dumb and more
Yeah,
easy to control.
they talk about the microchipping thing, and that's a conspiracy theory that I used to hear a lot back in these days, and I wonder if that was intentional.
Oh,
I
without
used to hear.
question. I mean, I think some of them are kidding. I think some of them are like, oh, I'm not really doing it. I think the microchipping one was real because the scientist is working on it at that moment.
Well, yeah, the Chitauri guy actually confirms the microchip one. He's like,
And
you should see the new microchip thing we're working on. It'll help us kill He-Man. I mean, conquer the Earth.
I thought that the humor in this was like incredibly on point. Like I think this is one like just the humor is awesome. And I think that that's why I don't mind all the darkness and all the grittiness and all the grimness and all the assholeness, because consistently these people feel like people to me because there's a genuine sense of charm and humor and self-awareness about all of them. Nick Fury is very different from the movies in this, and I don't think people talk about that enough. Nick Fury in the movies is more like 616 Nick Fury. He's very, very, very stern. This is
the first obvious difference between this Nick Fury and then the classic Nick Fury. He black. No,
I'm not saying 616 Nick Fury and Ultimate Nick Fury. I'm saying movie Nick Fury and Ultimate Nick Fury.
Yeah. Does anybody ever get confused these days when they're reading 616 comics if they're only familiar
Nick
with?
Fury is black in that now, so.
What, they retconned that?
Well, they didn't retcon it initially. They probably have now because they've rebooted it. Remember, they killed the two universes and mixed them together. I don't know how they handled Nick Fury, but White Nick
I wonder
Fury,
if anybody though ever goes. I wonder if anybody ever goes back though and reads like Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos from back in the day and gets confused because they're only familiar with.
I guarantee to you that they do.
Because they're only familiar with the new shit.
I guarantee to you that they do. But it's he's more of a jokester in the Ultimate Universe, and he's more of like a.
Well, he's more concerned with like media spin.
Yeah, he's more of a man of the 21st century than he is like an old school soldier. Like he's a mix of both, I would say. He's definitely got the back. I would say, here's how I would characterize him. He is a old school soldier who has gotten caught up in the glitz and glamour of his new job. And that's clear from the onset when he's having lunch with Bruce Banner. And he's like, this has been picked out by, a million different people, and there's a million people watching us, and there's like fucking scientists analyzing the food we've ordered, and everybody here is a secret agent, and all that stuff. He's clearly gone nuts, like with power. And he's taking full advantage of his job. I think that's really interesting. And I just think what Mark Millar does is he takes the situations and the archetypes from the early comics, and then he gives everybody a really bizarre, twisted, but compelling and believable motivation and decision on how to, use that position. Again, he's the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., but he's using it for his own means, he's not like, I'm good, I'm for the good of the planet. Yeah, but in my own way, Like I'll save the world on my terms.
Let me ask you a question about the Ultimate continuity.
Yeah.
Did they ever even do Hydra, or did the Chitauri just kind of fill in that role? Because it's weird.
I don't know if they ever. I don't think they ever actually did Hydra proper.
It's weird that we don't have that then, that they just didn't translate that.
They did the Red Skull, who was a completely different thing. He's awesome, but he's a completely different thing. He's Captain America's...
It's weird to me that they did him, because Kleiser in this is sort of the Red Skull, but an alien.
Nah, but they made it worthwhile because they made him so different, so it works.
He kind of occupies that same role.
Yeah, well, I thought of that, and then I didn't... then I thought about, like, oh, well... where is the Red Skull if there is one? I wonder maybe he was somebody else that Cap fought in World War II. We just never saw in this book, which is what I always assumed of Baron Zemo in the MCU, is that we just never saw Cap fight him in World War II. But that's obviously not true now. Um, but there's also no Zemo in this continuity. We don't because again, there's no Hydra. I'm pretty sure they never did them. The Red Skull was an independent terrorist who had super soldier background. Let's just say that. Maybe we'll talk about that at some point. We'll get into the spoilers of that.
How do you feel about Ultimate Captain America? There's an interesting...
he's probably one of the best things, right? I mean, he's pretty on point. He's kind of one of my favorite things ever.
I think there's a huge missed opportunity, though.
Oh, what way?
In this Ultimate continuity, where you have, and maybe they did this later. I obviously haven't read as much of this as you have. In this Ultimate continuity, where you have license to do whatever the fuck you want with these characters, and it's fine. You know, in a world where the Green Goblin gets to be a Hulk mixed with the Human Torch, you know, in that universe, I think because the whole idea is like, what if these Marvel characters existed in real life? I think a real life Captain America waking up now after being frozen in the 40s would just turn into like a raging asshole, and he kind of does a little bit in this. But I mean, even more so. He does it
a little bit, but you definitely think it would go farther. I actually kind of like.
I feel like a real life Captain America though, like in the real world, if that happened, would wake up and like he would probably become a villain, like a comic book. Like
without question. Well, they've done variations on that.
He would try to make America great again. You know.
I think they get away with about as much as they can and still have him be Captain America. You know. And that's what I like. I think it's subtle. And I think that he also...
Oh, the shit that Marvel's getting in trouble for now, or not really getting in trouble for, but the shit that like the fans have been going crazy about now, where they're doing this whole Captain America heel turn. Maybe that's over by now. I don't know.
No, it's still going, yeah.
Could totally do that in the Ultimate Universe, and he wouldn't even have to like write up this whole convoluted thing where he was a Hydra agent all along. It would just be like he wakes up and he would be like, hey, this modern world is kind of fucked up.
But I really like what they do with it that is different. Like he's not a superhero in this version. He's a soldier. Like at all. Like he doesn't. None of them are really superheroes until the end. It's kind of the thing. Like his costume, quote unquote, is military garb in the beginning, and it is still when he joins the Ultimates when they give him the new suit. But it's just more superhero bent. The Ultimates, the whole premise of it is that they take the idea of a superhero and kind of private military corporation it, you know, as to what that can be and what you can do with that. And that's how they try to play off the idea of the Avengers in this universe. I think that's brilliant. I love that. And I think that being so dependent on Tony Stark's involvement is also brilliant. This is not the Tony Stark who has gone through some kind of like anti-weapon epiphany. He's had an epiphany, but he's more so just like, I'm going to use all the shit I have for good stuff until I die.
Yeah. Did they ever do anything with that brain tumor?
Well, as you know, or as I've explained to you, maybe not on recording, Ultimate Iron Man, they don't really get into it in this. But Ultimate Iron Man is not just a guy. He was a genetic experiment from birth. And he's got super regenerative capabilities. All of his body are fast regenerating neuron cells. He's basically one big brain, and that is why he's able to operate the Iron Man armor later in life when he builds that. They get into more of that in his series, obviously, but there's obviously allusions to that because he's got holes in him when he's operating the Iron Man suit. And the Iron Man suit in this is a completely different thing. It's a very complex, sort of redundant at points piece of hardware that is very complicated and very hard to get right. Like when he deploys it against Hulk, it fucks up and he's only able to help in the fight momentarily. I like that, by the way, where he's like, they took 90 minutes to launch me and the visions got knocked off, so my sights are all like 90 degrees off. So we were talking about Captain America in particular, though. How did you just feel about how it kind of played in general, though? Like the beginnings being set in World War II. Did you think that built in well to the present day stuff, or did you think that it was an awkward leap?
That all works pretty well for me. It's kind of convenient in like a problematic way.
They do something with it in the sequel.
That he wakes up right when they're trying to fucking figure out the super soldier thing.
Yeah.
That was like one of the few bits of writing in this where I was like, really? Like, it would make because it's such an easy thing to.
Well, I mean, that's
rewrite.
what happens in the fucking original series. I mean, they did it on purpose to mirror the original series, and they used it for comedic effect. That's what they did.
Well, that's stupid. Don't do a reboot just to mirror
I
things
thought
that
it was
happen
funny, but yeah, it is still just as ridiculous. Again, they do something with it later, but it's so convoluted that it kind of doesn't even matter.
Well, and it would have been an easy thing to write around. All you would have had to do is swap that. What if they found Captain America's body first, and then that's what caused them to try and replicate the super soldier serum, and maybe they just didn't wake him up because they weren't sure if they could without killing him or something. You could science-y exposition the fuck out of that.
Well, because you already have. No, it's not like you have to have them. Like, we'll start recreating the super soldier serum. Really, realistically, what they should have done is just had the idea for the Ultimates not be a thing until Captain America wakes up, and then have Tony Stark come down from the mountain. Well, because it's like that. He wants to have that moment where Tony Stark comes down from a mountain and goes, "The Ultimates, we're gonna do it," But. You could have had that anyway, though, if Captain America would have woken up, and that have been his specific motivation. As it is, it's a reveal as to what that is later. But I just think that Cap waking up would have been icing on the cake. What did you think of Ultimate Tony Stark, though, in general?
Fine. I mean, he's Tony Stark.
He's not the exact same character, though. He's a lot more. He's just simply not as fucking heroic. I mean, it's that simple. He's all about the biz, which is good. It's a lot more realistic. He's all about the tech. Tony Stark in the comics, he's a very, very idealistic son of a bitch. And Ultimate Tony Stark is certainly as well to a point, but he's more about, I guess he's just more about his general sort of self. Maybe selfishness and ego definitely plays more into it, but more so just kind of what's necessary of the moment. Not necessarily hardcore ideals that are stuck to do or die. Definitely not that. The other big thing is the alcoholism is taken to an extreme with Ultimate Iron Man, where he's always drinking. Like, he always has a drink in his hand.
Right.
Like that, they don't, like if he doesn't, it's brought up. Like, it's like, what? Tony's not drinking. Like, he has to pilot the armor drunk. Like, he says that at one point, he's like, who would dare climb into that thing sober? Yeah. It's brilliant. I love it. Just to point out another general thing that I really like about this whole thing is that it's kind of like what I like about Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is more a straight-up comedy, obviously. But it's Ghostbusters in the sense that we get to see these people go through more kind of mundane, real-world shit that's kind of funny and goofy and satirical, and a little more all over the place for the sake of social commentary and, poking and prodding the audience to get a reaction, while we still place them in this context of this superhero good versus evil, light and dark universe that totally still has all those tropes that you need in the Marvel universe. Like, this is still the Marvel universe, right?
Yeah.
It's just not 616. But you enter this world, you're like, oh, I'm still in a Marvel world,
Yeah.
Like, something Marvel-based is going on here. I see Spider-Man swinging around, so
The elements are certainly.
But, so I think that's just one of the things I really enjoy about it, is that we get to see all this, like, exploration of real-world, reactions and motivations in the context of Nazi aliens and really scary, threats and all. Like I think that the alien threat is fantastic. I think it's one of the best alien invasion stories Marvel's ever done. I haven't read all of them, but I think that this is definitely the one where you're like, this works in every way. Like why they're there, what they're doing, the way the Ultimates overcome them, it all makes sense. Would you agree? How do you feel about the overall invasion?
Yeah, that worked out fine. It just sort of starts like doesn't really like they hint at it early on in World War II with Captain America.
Yeah, it's there for. Well, I appreciate that it's there from the beginning. I think if it wasn't, the fact that it doesn't become a thing until so late into the run would be problematic. Well, that's another point we should probably discuss. Do you think this is too much origin and not enough like fighting? Because it's a lot of early on, like it's a lot of ideas, a lot of discussion, a lot of hinting at stuff, a lot of build up. Are you okay with that, or do you think there's too much of it?
I'm all right with it. I mean, I guess you kind of need it, don't you?
Well, I think the series detractors that you brought up before, people who don't like this, would disagree. I think they would go, no, just get to the hitting each other. But there isn't really a proper fight in this. Well, you've got the World War II battle. You've got the World War II battle.
It almost feels like the people who wrote this had an idea for an Avengers movie that would never get made. So
No, but again, no, dude, that was intentional. Like that was absolutely intentional. They wrote that with that in mind. That's why there's people talking about casting in this. They wanted to attract all those people. They told the Ultimate people, like, hey, we want people to make movies, so base it, like, do it with that in mind. So it's a very cinematic comic book as well.
And they attracted only one of the people that they tried to attract.
Yeah. But I was gonna say something else very, very particular. But no, I for one love that, because again, it becomes a part of the story as to why there's been no threat, no reason for them to assemble. There's just been the idea of it. The government is dumping billions of dollars into it, and that's it. And then nothing happens. Because they talk about, like, there's only been really one major supervillain threat in U.S. history, which was Magneto. Now, I don't know which particular event they're referring to, presumably something that happened in Ultimate X-Men. But Magneto, even in that series, Magneto was a long-standing threat prior.
There's some big thing that Magneto does early on in Ultimate X-Men, and I can't recall what it was because it's been too long. But there's some kind of a huge event that takes place. Like, I think it's like the first big thing that the X-Men ever do. I think it's kind of interesting. There's one line that I thought was really funny in this, where Captain America's used to be girlfriend, who's now married to Bucky, says, oh, Cap, I'm so glad that our grandchildren will have nice, wholesome heroes to look up to now instead of that Spider-Man and those X-Men. And it's funny to me because, and it's hilarious because in the Ultimates universe, the Spider-Man and the X-Men are probably like as heroic as it gets, especially Spider-Man. Like all of the
Spider-Man is without question the most heroic of all of the Ultimate heroes. Yeah.
Because everybody else is a fucking dick to like very.
Well, everybody else is getting paid, Like the X-Men are not really superheroes though. In this universe, they're more like they're described more as military commandos by and large. They just are put in a superhero context.
Sort of like Black Ops operatives, kind of.
Yeah.
Which I think might be vaguely inspired by the way they like look in the movie.
Without question, yeah.
This was right around that time. I always like that. I like that approach with the X-Men.
I don't mind the approach. I don't love all the costumes. Wolverine's is like, it's just so generic. It's like, well, he's just wearing a shirt. Like I wish he had mask, at least since I love Wolverine's mask, and I hate that people don't like it.
I think what you got to do is just do a slight redesign on Wolverine's mask, because I think the part of it that people don't like is how big the fucking ears used to be.
You don't need them to be that big, yeah.
Yeah, you can tone those way the fuck down, and I'd be fine with it.
Just do it as big as Batman's or whatever,
Yeah, but like kind of more roundly shaped so that it doesn't just look like Batman.
Well, I mean, obviously not, but you just.
I mean, they don't seem to care about looking too much like Batman though, because they have the Black Panther. That's just straight up a bat suit.
It is. It's weird sometimes because you look at Black Panther and you're like, oh, because sometimes Black Panther has a cape and you're like, oh, that's Batman.
Dude, you slap a red bat symbol on Black Panther, it's fucking Batman Beyond, dude.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he need a mouth, but yes. But what I was going to say was that I really like that these guys are getting paid to do this. They've got all this money behind them. They have every resource at their disposal in the world to stop a supervillain, and there just isn't one. And for most of it, the only thing that they can come up with to fight is each other.
It's really it takes so long for a supervillain to pop up. That would never happen in the 616 universe. There's a supervillain around every corner in 616.
Now, I think the idea here is that it's not that there are no supervillains around. It is that their purview is like they're just all the ones that Spider-Man are dealing with. They're just like, we're not gonna. He can handle that. And there are some that they're just like, we're gonna leave them. Like, they should be sending them after mutants as well if they're really concerned about that. But they're mostly, they don't want to get their hands dirty with the public team, Because that's the other thing that the Ultimates have to consider is they're the public shield face. They have to have PR. They have a whole PR department. Betty Ross in this continuity is a PR agent.
Did they ever do like an Ultimates versus X-Men thing?
Yeah, there was a whole series about that. It was pretty good.
Because that would be super easy to do. I mean, all you got to do is have the whole public hysteria about the mutants.
Well, they do something genuinely fucked up, and the Ultimates get sent after them. Well, because like that, you find out that after Magneto murdered a bunch of people, Charles was keeping him was keeping him alive after he was like brutally. Something happened. He was going to die, and then Charles was keeping him alive in secret. The Ultimates found out. Nick Fury found out. Charles Xavier and Nick Fury were mad tight prior to that. I'm sure he mentions him in this, but they're actually mad tight in this universe. But at that point, nah, and he sends the Ultimates after him, and it doesn't go well for either side.
Just picturing fucking Patrick Stewart and Sam Jackson, fucking hanging out.
Yeah.
Like
exactly, just like that. Later on, they make up, but never properly. The Ultimates also fight. Well, some of the Ultimates fight some of the X-Men in the Ultimate Galactus trilogy because they get mixed up in the wrong places at the wrong time. We'll talk about that at some point as well. But back to the series proper. So let's talk about the interpersonal conflicts then. So. Because again, that's where all of the fighting is early on outside of the World War II background. So you have the initial big thing, which is everybody fights the Hulk. That's the first big, and it's treated like a proper supervillain fight anyway because it's the Hulk. So how did you feel about that? That's probably my favorite issue.
And the impetus for this huge city-shattering event is that Betty Ross went up for dinner with Freddie Prinze Jr.
So before the series starts proper, she and Bruce are on a 6-month separation because she bought one of Thor's self-help books. That's the interesting little side thing about that.
By the way, were they married? Because
they were they're engaged.
Okay.
So. And she was like, we're going on a break, Bruce. So now she's, going on a date with fucking Freddie Prinze Jr. And Bruce Banner is all like, I won't have it.
Was it even a date, though?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. She was trying to get him to fucking... She probably would have fucked him, though, is the thing. This version of Betty Ross totally would have. It was not a date, though.
Exactly. She's She's Alpha. Yeah, you're right. This version of Betty Ross would have definitely
Oh
fucked
no,
Freddie Prinze.
I had no question in
This
her
is
mind,
this
and
is
I have
no
no
lip.
question in my mind that they would have fucked. That Bruce had every reason to think that. It's just more of how he reacted that was the problem.
Yeah, I mean
So how
that's
does he
not really.
react, D?
It's not really the reason he turns himself into Hulk, though. He finds out about
No,
the
it is
Freddie Prinze.
absolutely the reason, and he finds an excuse for it by saying, "Oh, I wanted to give everybody something to fight."
Well, no, because he had already done it before he even found out that she was at dinner with Freddie Prinze Jr. He called her to tell her that he had done it. The real admission that he made to her was that he just missed being big, so it's like an addiction thing. And then once the Hulk came out, he was pissed off about the whole Freddie Prinze Jr. thing. It wasn't like Dr. Banner was like, "What? My girlfriend's going out with Freddie Prinze Jr. Time to become the Hulk."
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that, D. You're right. So he says, "Okay, I just wanted to give everybody something to fight because there has been no villain, and otherwise they're going to can us." And he hasn't made any headway on breaking down Captain America's blood to recreate the Super Soldier program, the Super Soldier serum. So they're going to shut down the Ultimates, probably, because there's been no reason for them so far. They've just been this big joke. So he becomes the Hulk and gives everybody this big problem to solve, and makes everybody else heroes. And that, interestingly, makes Bruce Banner more like, oh, you kind of feel bad for him more than you do the other guys, because he makes the biggest sacrifices.
And they just find soldiers who are the same blood type as Captain America and just give them a transfusion. That's how She-Hulk was created in the 616.
I don't know. That's a good point. I don't know why they haven't tried that. But because they're just like, we haven't been able to recreate it ever. Well, which is not true. They reveal later that they have. In another series, there's another Captain America who's in secret. Yeah.
Of course, there.
Well, there was a Vietnam Captain. It's a Vietnam Captain America. It's really interesting.
Does he turn out to be the Red Skull? That would have been cool.
They're similar characters. Well, I'll just reveal this. Fuck it. If you were gonna read Ultimate Avengers by Mark Millar and you don't want something spoiled, stop listening now. Red Skull turns out to be Captain America's son, illegitimate son. Gale and Steve slept together right before he went off to the front and, was lost in the missile strike. And she was pregnant. The dudes in the government found out about it and were like, this is a problem because you will ruin his reputation because he's dead now. You guys were never married. And Captain America having a reputation as having an illegitimate child is not cool, and leaving a child behind after going to war is not cool. So you're going to deliver the child, we're going to take it, and then you're going to go fuck off and forget about the whole thing. And
he'll never mention this to Cap after he woke up.
Well, no, they don't want anybody to know about it. So he gets raised by S.H.I.E.L.D., and then the day he turns 18, he goes crazy. And he just kills everybody and becomes Red Skull. And he turns himself into Red Skull. He cuts his face off and turns himself into that. I liked it. I thought it was cool, especially since Kleiser, you had to do something like that, I thought, because Kleiser in this is pretty much exactly what Red Skull was in 616. He's the high-tech Nazi equivalent of Captain America. And their dynamic is awesome. I absolutely love their fight scene at the end of the series when they're fighting on the Air Force Base. What did you think of Kleiser as a villain, particularly in their kind of dynamic?
I liked him. I mean, I like Red Skull, and he's basically Red Skull. So
they're not the same characters, though. He's a lot more. Yes, again, he fills that role, but he's not the same character. So the idea is that the Chitauri, they've been here for a long time, since 1777, Nick says, and they've been trying to influence different political groups into genocide for years in order to conquer the world. By cleansing it into order, just like Hydra wanted to do in Winter Soldier.
Which is, again, something that kind of gets integrated, another idea that kind of gets integrated into the MCU. You haven't watched much of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but you find out that the MCU version of Hydra didn't just start with the Nazis either. It's been around for much longer than that, sort of influencing events and whatnot. And then World War II was just sort of an opportunity that they took to try and take everything over. Because you find out in that, it's kind of stupid, honestly, as Season 3 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Not the good moments, but some kind of stupid writing going on. You find out that Hydra was started by these people who worshipped this thing that they thought was a god, but it's actually an ancient inhuman, and then it like possesses the body of one of the previous villains from the series. It's the whole thing. But anyway, the whole idea of it being like around much longer than just World War II, kind of. The whole time I was reading this, I was like, wow, they really just took all of this and switched it out for Hydra in the MCU version.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was done really well here, the way they mixed it all together, though. I feel like his characterization, is a little bit like he doesn't really have much of one. He's kind of just kill, do evil thing, work for the hive kind of mentality. But I like that he's able to put up with Cap, and nobody is able to really take him out because he'll just heal up until Hulk gets a hold of him. I love the last issue where the Hulk comes in at the end and saves everybody, because I just thought that was the ultimate, hey, get it? Way to really cap off this version of the Avengers, where they're all kind of, personally flawed dickheads, where they get the thing that fucked them all over initially, that's a big problem, to win the day from them at the end. Like, because if they didn't have Banner, I don't think they would have won. What do you think?
Banner and Thor. Those are the two key ingredients.
Yeah, Thor as well. Tony does it a little bit.
Yeah.
I really like the scene where Tony gets knocked out of the sky, he pukes in his helmet, and he has like mental breakdown that he can't do this thing. That I think they borrowed for Iron Man 3. I think that moment it was an inspiration for Iron Man 3. Yeah. So back to the interpersonal conflicts. I wanted to say a few more things. There's another controversial element of this we should definitely discuss before we start to wrap things up. We're definitely.
I wanted to say a minute ago that when we were talking about Kleiser.
Oh.
Near the end of the story, though, he kind of devolves into a little bit of some old villain cliches,
Oh,
First
absolutely. I think it's intentional, though.
First of all, he keeps Wasp alive for way too long.
Well, he's planning on eating her. And becoming her.
He's planning on becoming her, sure. But then that becomes inconsequential in the very next scene when his fucking bosses show up and they're like, we're just going to blow up the planet. So he really should have killed her at that point.
That was I feel like that was a flourish of Mark Millar. He was having fun making Kleiser this stereotypical villain because he's this alien who's lived on Earth and he knows about culture and he knows about what humans do and how they act, and he's trying to make fun of that in his own behavior.
Again,
I agree. I think it's a little much.
And again, this is all written to kind of feel like a movie, and it definitely comes across as like a movie villain type of thing too. To like, let me tell you my evil plan.
Oh yeah. Well, but he's also showing off. He wants her to know that he's fucking kicked her in the dick, and that he's won, and that he's claimed his superiority. And I think that's what that is. I really enjoyed all that, and I really liked his last encounter with Hulk, where fucking he's trying to be like, wow, you beat me, congratulations, Hulk, and Hulk just fucking kills him. He's like, shut up, I don't want to hear your shit. I'm not interested. But I wanted to get back to some of the interpersonal conflicts we were talking about before. So Hank Pym is infamous in the 616 universe for having slapped Janet Pym, the Wasp, at one point. It was in a very different context from what they do with it in this universe, however.
Ultimate Janet would have been lucky and quite happy to have gotten away with just a slap.
Yeah. So, how did you feel about that?
Okay. Well, first of all, it kind of comes right the fuck out of it. Like, I knew that Hank Pym in the 616 continuity has some major fucking issues going on. He's
Yeah,
like,
but that's more like they seem to be directly more tied to his experiments. This is 10 times more deep-seated.
He's got all these issues going on, and that's probably why they chose not to do him in the Ant-Man movie, and go with the other Ant-Man. He's got all this shit going on, and I knew that. But when they do it in this, they hadn't really hinted at that. So when he just starts beating the shit out of his wife, you're like, what? Like, I think there should have been some moments of him, acting questionably towards her earlier on.
Because he's a pretty good guy up to that point. I mean, I think that's intentional. I think you're supposed to like him up until that moment. He's supposed to be like the charming together version of Bruce Banner.
Yeah, maybe. And I mean, the thing that seems to set him off is that he gets his ass kicked, like, immediately during the whole
By Bruce Banner, yeah. He and Banner don't like each other at all.
No, and neither does Jan. She doesn't really like Bruce either.
Well, none of them really like Bruce, I guess. They all think he's a little like they all know something's off about him, and then obviously after the Hulk thing, he's just kind of a nutcase. I would have liked, for one.
Yeah, to me, it kind of comes a little bit out of nowhere, and I thought maybe they should have hinted at the fact that he had some dark shit going on inside earlier than that.
Again, though, I think they play it off well. Where Betty is like, I swore I wasn't going to bring this up, but yeah, there's history of this,
Yeah, well, that was like a little too late for the like.
No, but I thought it was a little too late intentionally to show this. Don't do it like this is the problematic way to operate about this. Like to be this way about your friend being slapped around by her lover is bad. That was Tony's whole point, Yeah,
and you can still have that scene, but I think narratively,
you should have shown that was in the cards though earlier on. Well, I will say this.
I think a little foreshadowing would have been helpful. Is what or not even helpful, but needed, or not even needed. Would have been good from a writing perspective. I feel like it's just the character, and especially if you're somebody who's not familiar with maybe the fact that Hank Pym in the 616 continuity has some issues. If you're maybe reading this and this is your first version of the character, wow, that would just come right the fuck out of nowhere, like with nothing to indicate to you that it was possible. But man, does he beat the shit out of her? And he fucking sprays her with a can of
They get into a
spray.
proper fight. It's not him slapping her around. Well, at first it is. He slaps her. She's like, "Oh, fuck you." Beats the shit out of him back. Then they get into a proper fist fight. Because they both know how to fight. I mean, they're both trained superheroes at this point. So they both know how to fight. Then she starts using her powers and he gets pissed because he can't just suddenly turn into a giant man in the middle of this building. So he fucking douses her with fucking Raid, which is insanely fucked up on so many levels. She falls onto the floor, begs him to stop now that's fucking crippled her and ruined her, and he has this creepy, horrible line where he's like, and horrible I mean in like a impactful way, where he's like, "I bet your skin just feels like it was dipped in acid," and I'm like, that's your fucking wife. Like, this is not some supervillain you've just fucking thwarted, you fucking animal. Like, my God. And then, not worse, but just like, to add insult to injury, and more injury on top of that insult, he uses his ants, which he's just starting to perfect, his pheromone-based communication system that he can use to control ants, to retrieve her, to bring her out. And by retrieve her, they grab her and bite the crap out of her. And send her into shock. So did you think it was too much?
I think slapping her would have been fine. Yeah, in that I think it would have got the job done. Jesus Christ, overkill.
Well, do you just think the way it was written? Did you like the way it played out, or did you think that Mark Millar went too far? That rhymes.
No, I would be fine with all of that, again, if it had been foreshadowed at all, because it just kind of happened.
I like the way it's done. I think Giant Man being taken out of it is abrupt. And you don't... I think it works, though. I think you're like, oh, shit, he's out of the picture now because they can't work with him because he's a fucking asshole. And addicted to drugs. But, that's not stopping them with Tony Stark, obviously. He's a little bit of a different case, though. He's a big brain, so it's fine. But I definitely think it's abrupt and a little... I will agree, it should have been foreshadowed a little more. I love his fight with Cap, though. Like, because Cap is not having it. He's like, you were a soldier under my command. I'm putting you in line. He shows up to Hank Pym and beats the shit out of him. How'd you feel about that?
Yeah, it was a fight.
You seem very detached to this whole thing. Just in general, just like, yeah, it struck me. So I got that you did not love this. You just kind of were like, yep, this works.
I mean, it was fine.
Interesting. Okay, I see. But I like that fight in particular because Captain America's like, you get to see him leaping around, grabbing bits of Hank and like throwing him around, and it does a good job of showing like Hank Pym's powers are kind of useless. Like, he can grow real big, but his actual power when he gets there is his own strength just scaled to that height, you know?
Exactly. What he should have done in conjunction with being able to grow tall is done some major, like, martial arts training or something.
Well, obviously. But...
He kind of takes for granted the fact that, I'm fucking... What was it, 29 and...
No, he's like 59 feet.
That's right. It was
60 is the mark where the human skeleton cannot withstand anymore.
That's right. 60 is not. So it was 59 and like 11 inches. So it was 11 and a half inches. So it was like right. It was just as tall as he could possibly.
Oh, I love that moment. That was one of the best one of the best spreads in the whole fucking series. Is when he's like, stop the experiment, I'm being ripped apart. They open the door terrified, and he's fine. I love that. And he's just gigantic.
Yeah, he just kind of takes for granted. I'm like, I'm fucking big. I'm going to just fucking squash you. But it doesn't really work out that way against the Hulk or Captain America.
No, he's a fuck up in the whole series, pretty much. He doesn't really do anything of... It's interesting. He doesn't really do anything really, like... to help out until the Ultimate Universe gets bad. It's interesting. That's when
later on, they already alluded to he's going to make Ultron, right? Like,
it takes a while to develop, but yes.
Yeah, they alluded to that pretty early on here.
Yeah, they sort of mix a couple of different Pym created villains though when they did Ultron finally. It took a while for them to get there. It's not Ultimates 2. Ultimates 2 is the Legion of what is it called?
The Legion of Doom?
No, what's the Marvel equivalent of that?
Meanwhile, that's the Legion of... Oh shit, what is them? Isn't it the like Masters of Evil?
The Masters of Evil. That's it. That's what Ultimates 2 is. The Ultimates 2 is the Masters of Evil. So.
Oh, okay. Is it like the classic Masters of Evil lineup?
They get as close to it as they can.
Fucking Doom and Loki and the whole bunch.
It's not Doom because Doom wasn't. This is. Oh no! This is post Fantastic Four, but Doom would not have been. Ultimate Doom would not have been about that. Ultimate Doom is a very good ruler. He's just a prick. He's not a arch. He's not. He's not a. He's not going to work with Loki.
He's not a master of evil.
Loki, Abomination, Thor, a weird Russian Thor. I don't remember what his deal was. There was some. There was a couple. I think he was an Ultimates original. There's a couple of other characters who I forget.
Did he have like a hammer and a sickle?
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, there's a character, I forget his name. He was on a team with Crimson Dynamo and a couple other Russian characters.
They
There's
did
another
like
guy that
Crimson Dynamo is another one, but they did like 18 different Crimson Dynamos.
yeah. Anyway, in
Well, that
regular
616 I think does that as well. I think there's like a bunch of Crimson Dynamos anyway.
shit, what's it called? Yeah, there's a team in the normal Marvel universe. It's like a Russian superhero team, kind of a Russian.
They're in Ultimate as well. They're in Ultimate Fantastic Four. Yeah, I forget what they're called.
Kind of a Russian response to the Avengers. Like some chick that's got some sort of energy powers, and there's a guy who can turn into a bear, and then there's fucking the guy that you were just talking about and Crimson Dynamo. Shit, I can't think of what they're called. But yeah.
Anyway, so I overall I think that this series does a good job of making the interpersonal conflict just as interesting as aliens invading and Nazis and big explosions and invasion and that and intrigue and plot exposition. I think Nick Fury and Captain America talking about how fucked up the 21st century is and how hard it is to exist in it and to have different values of most of the people around you. I think that's all just as interesting. That first issue, where 21st Century Man, where Captain America's first back, wow, like that's one of my favorite issues. Well, just really the best version of Cap being brought back to the present day. I think that's better than the movies even, and the movies handle it really well as well. What was your favorite issue, would you say?
Favorite issue. Good question. I read them all in one go, so they kind of blur together for me.
Yeah, we obviously kind of read them both as trades, but I read them both I read it twice in one sitting bursts as well. But again, I would definitely say that the Hulk, the first Hulk issue is my favorite. The first Captain America issue as well. Otherwise, it's probably the last one, How I Learned to Love the Hulk. Like that's a really great issue as well.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of the way that the Maximoff twins were done or not done?
Oh, I thought that was brilliant because they're dicks anyway, so fuck them. I thought that was a really funny joke where he was like, if you slow down the footage, you'll be able to see that I saved your life on 3 separate instances. I loved all that.
Yeah, and I believe him too.
Because they show later that they're on the level. They're proper badasses and shit. Scarlet Witch is just as insanely powerful in this universe as she is in the 616 universe.
At least the first time it happened, I believed him when he was talking about that. When they did the joke again afterwards, after the big battle, I was like, I don't know if I buy that you were really there.
No, they totally just showed up there for all the glory at the end. But they're mutants, obviously, and so's the Wasp. We could talk about that for a second if you want.
That was an interesting reveal.
But they don't want any mutants on the team initially because they know that that's bad PR. They know that they're gonna have to get there eventually. Like, but initially they're like, no, first run, no muties because it's not good for business. But well, technically they do because Wasp is a mutant in this continuity. But she lies that she has the backstory of the 616 version where Hank built the technology for her.
Yeah, how do you feel about that? By the way,
I love that. I think that's brilliant. I think that's very, very clever because she's still getting something out of it by not being labeled a mutant. So it's this great fucked up kind of symbiotic relationship in their relationship that sort of that's a bit of foreshadowing as to it's not realized, and I guess you don't realize that until that moment. But it's a nice reason for their relationship to fall apart, or one of. That they have that bitterness there, because also his giant growing abilities are based on her mutant genes.
Yeah, which is why she instinctively knew that he would not grow to 60 feet and die.
Yeah, because his powers work on the same principle as his does. Right. It's getting late. But still trying to peg down your favorite issue. Just your favorite kind of moment, and we can kind of associate that to be the whole issue.
Okay. Well, I did really love the one Captain America line that he has when he's fighting with Kaiser, where he says, "Do you think this letter on my forehead stands for France?"
Yeah, that's fucking amazing. I can't get over how good that is. Where Kleiser is like, "Surrender, Captain America. I want you to say it. Say it. Say I surrender." And Captain America just gets a hold of him and just goes, "Surrender? Surrender? Do you think this A on my head stands for France?" Oh, so good. They keep that consistent too. He hates the French throughout the entire Ultimate run. He
That is
always
so,
is like, "Fuck the French."
that is so great, and also so offensive to French people. I love it. But yeah, I guess the most spectacular thing would have to be like with you, the big Hulk fight early on.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
I don't think they ever got that spectacular. I mean, like, imagine if they had done that in a movie. We still haven't seen. I mean, we haven't seen all of the Avengers go up against the Hulk. We got the Hulkbuster, but
yeah,
that
probably the
was
most
it.
memorable. That's got to be the most memorable thing that happens in this entire run.
Yeah, without question. We covered all the Avengers. I mean, how did you feel about how did you feel about Ultimate Black Widow? We kind of talked about Hawkeye.
I mean, she didn't really strike me as that different from regular Black Widow, honestly.
Well,
Yeah,
she's a super soldier, but yeah,
yeah.
she's
Uh,
not a super soldier
well,
in 616.
okay, is she a super soldier in this?
Yeah,
Okay, that's good. Was that explained,
yeah.
or did they just hint at it?
No. I like it's that line that I mentioned before, where Hawkeye is like, "I can't talk like you can while doing stuff like this because I'm not enhanced like you are."
Yeah, but that
So,
was kind of okay. Well, that was a bit vague.
well, it's
That
vague.
is,
We don't know exactly what exactly the limits of her abilities are, but I just get a vague kind of limited Captain America sense where she's just strength, agility, durability. Um,
so, is this explained better later on, or is this just based on that
she gets
Hawkeye
an
line?
origin thing later on. I haven't read it, but I assume so. She's she's problematic to discuss in hindsight because of what they do with her in Ultimates 2.
What did they do with her in old?
She goes bad. She turns out to be a bad guy.
Okay.
And
What's
it obviously puts everything she says it does in a different connotation prior and during this, because it seems like that's always been the case because Loki is involved and reality is put into question at that point. It's nuts. We'll get there obviously, but Dylan, what else do you want to say about? Oh, I know. We gotta talk about this for a minute. All the shit has, we've covered a lot of ground obviously about the story. I think we can both agree it's flawed, but really fun and really interesting and totally engrossing. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, a lot of the problems I have with it so far have been like things that kind of seem like they come out of nowhere or maybe needed a bit more explanation. Ultimately, I think maybe this could have benefited from being a little bit longer than 13 issues. Um,
Hmm. I can agree with that. I don't think it feels rushed though.
yeah, no, I wouldn't say rush. Just I just think certain things are a little underdeveloped, and then when they happen, you're like, wait, what? What just happened? What's going on? Why? Uh, that's all.
I think that's a totally fair point. Um, but Dylan, all that aside, the art is consistently amazing, right?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
I mean, I think Brian Hitch is my favorite artist, dude. Fuck everybody else. This is comic book art at its absolute finest, dude. If I was gonna get somebody to draw a comic, this is what I would want. Like, this is pinnacle stuff. Like, this is blockbuster comic book art at its finest. Um, I mean, my favorite moments. It's all the stuff with the Hulk. It's Thor blowing up all those spaceships at the end. It's that moment where Kleiser looks right at the camera and smiles. It's that big. It's anytime Hank Pym goes Giant Man. It's that moment where Captain America fucking leaps out of the plane. Just when Iron Man first suits up, it's all so good. It all just looks amazing.
And by God, can that man draw a convincing Samuel L. Jackson?
Yeah, we've certainly come to that consensus without question. Um, but Dean, is there anything else you wanted to say in particular about the series?
Hmm. No.
Do you? So, as we established, the first Avengers movie very similar to this in many ways. You know,
Yeah.
it's even looser than the fucking animated movie is, obviously, as an adaptation, obviously. But
It's not really an adaptation.
no,
It's,
it's just inspired by it in some respects. It steals some ideas. And
takes
obviously the
name
villain
Chitauri.
plot is different.
For example, it takes the name Chitauri from this, but the Chitauri in that are
No,
completely
they're a
different.
completely different thing in that. Yeah, they look a little like they look under the skin, but their characterization is different.
And they're not as big. The Chitauri are said to be like 9 feet tall or something. So they're like these huge hulking creatures. Although we don't really get to see one unmorphed in this, do we?
No, because the detransformation effect is it takes a while. And we never get to see one after it's happened completely. We only see them when they partially detransformed, and we get to see because when Hulk beats up Kleiser, he beats him up so hard that like he pulls the skin off, and you see the Chitauri underneath, and it's all crushed up though because it's not extended out completely. So we don't really get to see them for what they really are.
Right. Which I just default to what they looked like in the animated movie at that point.
They wouldn't have though. That one glimpse we get at it doesn't really look like that at all. It looks more horse-like.
Well, all we really get to see is the head. I'm talking about just more over like the shape of the body.
Oh, sure. Okay, fine, yeah. But head-wise, it's completely different. They look more like velociraptors in the movie. Again, this struck me as more horse-like. My question to you is going to be though, would you like to see a straight up movie adaptation of this, Watchmen-esque, just straight up do it?
I don't think it would ever fly unless Marvel, and I don't think they will because Marvel Studios, I can't imagine them doing this. They would have to go full. They would have to do what Fox is doing right now with their X-Men properties and go full R, and just not be afraid of the fucking horrifying spousal abuse and the cannibalism and all of those elements. I don't think you can do this story the way it's written here as PG-13.
I think you're totally right. I would love to see it though. I don't know if it's necessary. I don't think it is. I'm just saying that I think it would be cool to see, and all the pieces are already there. However, at the end of the day,
I'd be okay to see another more faithfully adapted animated movie.
That's maybe you do it. Maybe the best place for the Ultimates is as like an FX animated show, for mature audiences. You do it like the Avengers is a job, like a weekly 9 to 5 thing, like that's how you play it. You do it like, oh, it's Ghostbusters except they're the Avengers, Yeah. That's how you can play it, and I think that you could get a lot of mileage out of that. Because again, that's kind of how this is, except it's not built to be like week to week. Because they never planned their Ultimate Avengers stuff to be. I keep calling it that just for clarity, but they never planned their Ultimates stuff as an ongoing series. It was always like little mini series.
It's kind of a waste of potential that they didn't make the Chitauri in the MCU more like they are here in the comics, because what a way to do the Skrulls, even though you don't have the rights to the Skrulls,
Yeah, well, I mean, they did the Skrulls in the Ultimate Universe when they did the Fantastic Four, and they have a completely different fucking villain plot. It's not nearly as simplist. It's not. This is obviously more in line with something they would do in 616, but the Ultimate version is like ramped up to the ultimate extreme.
The Skrulls still shapeshift in the Ultimate Universe?
Yeah, they don't really have to, but yeah. They're not. There's no need. Because what they do to conquer is perfect. I keep like not wanting to spoil this. They basically arrive on a planet Vulcan-esque in Star Trek. Go, oh my god, you guys are great. Join us in the great cosmic awareness. But you should know everybody in the cosmos has superpowers. So you guys should probably join us up on that. So they pass out pills to everybody on the planet that gives everybody superpowers. And it kills everybody eventually. Now, there is this weird assumption that everybody in the world would take it, which I don't think is true. I don't think everybody
especially in the Marvel universe where there's all this mutant hatred going around. I think there would be a strong, like, well, what do we want to be like the muties? Like,
yeah, it's weird, but well, to be fair, this happens in an alternate Marvel continuity. Not alternate Marvel continuity, alternate timeline in the Ultimate Universe where it's like something happens and time gets fucked up, and this is like an alternate time, and that's when the Skrulls invade. We might have Ultimate Fantastic Four is long, but it's good. We might talk about at least the first part of that at some point. Anyway, read the comic, man. This is so interesting and so. If you grew up in this era, I think you have to read this. This is required reading. This, if you like Marvel and you like comics, this is absolutely worthwhile commentary and story direction done with those characters and those themes for this time period. In my opinion, it's one of my favorite examples of it. And again, to me, maybe it's a guilty pleasure in that regard because I am so partial to this era because it's when I grew up. But I think that only makes it more interesting and more worth reading if you have that perspective. So I think it's better than Ghostbusters 2. What's your final thoughts, D?
I mean, yeah, if we're rating this on a scale of Ghostbusters 2, then yeah. Yeah, I think it's certainly interesting. It's very polarizing, as Bill said. So you'll probably either love it or hate it. I was on the love side, but I do have some issues with it. But I think go check it out. It's very interesting. Again, as Bill was extolling a few minutes ago, if for nothing else but the art, go look.
And it's
look at some pretty pictures.
It's a breezy read because of how visual the storytelling is.
Yeah, especially that first issue, man. It's a whole lot of soldiers running up on a beach. Yeah.
Oh, that's one part I didn't love because of that. Like, I at a certain point just like, who, what's going on? Because it's just people dying, you know? It's just people being shot. But it's very effective. It's very cool looking.
There's one weird moment in the final battle where right after Iron Man like powers his suit back up and flies back to join the battle. Like, I guess this dude just like knocked this kid over or something. Did you notice that?
Oh yeah, when that was a weird moment where like all the soldiers are assholes and the Ultimates are the only ones really doing anything, and I'm like, well, do we really need that? Like this dude, this kid just inspired Iron Man, and it was dumb. I didn't like that either. You're right. That's a good point.
We have not drawn that panel and used that page space for like, I don't know, another panel of Thor punching something in the face.
Yeah, you didn't need that. I also really like how I think we talked about this a little bit, how different the Iron Man armor is, how complex it is, like requires like an entire crew and maintenance staff and people watching it in order to run it. You know?
Yeah.
Like, Tony Stark can't just do it on his own. Like, that's not feasible in this universe. How'd you feel about that?
That was cool. I forgot to mention this. I really like the antagonistic relationship between Tony and Jarvis.
Yeah, Jarvis is great in the Ultimate Universe, isn't he? He's fucking hitting on Thor and Captain America. It's great.
Jarvis is like the people. Jarvis is kind of the audience reading the comments.
Yeah, if you don't like this, like he's your voice because he thinks that they're all assholes as well.
Like, he's just sitting around going like, y'all are dicks. Like, what are you doing? Like, fuck all this.
Like, you're all supposed to be superheroes. Like, why are you like this? Like, just get over yourselves. even though he in and of himself, he's a lazy, extortionist fucking asshole, so...
It kind of reminds me of the relationship in that show Archer, between Archer and his butler Woodhouse.
Well, because it's also like, Tony is like, I need him, though. Like, I absolutely rely on his presence.
Yeah, that's the same idea in Archer. Holy shit, now I do want a more faithfully done animated version of this story, because I want fucking H. John Benjamin to voice Tony Stark. It'd be great.
Well, all right, D. We've come quite a long way in talking about 13 issues of spousal abuse and cannibalism, as you like to put it. And I think that we've covered enough ground for this week. So I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of DFOS.
I think that the title of Mark Millar's memoir. When he's an aging comic book writer, write a book all about how he got
cannibalism and spousal abuse. Yeah.
With
pictures by Brian Hitch, who's the artist I forgot to mention before. Brian Hitch is the one who does the incredible art, by the way.
Spousal abuse and cannibalism, the Mark Millar story.
I'm sure he would approve. Well, Dylan, next week, there was some personal message that I saw where you mentioned a science week, so I think that makes the most sense. We'll do a science week next week. There's been plenty of stuff happening in the paleontological world of late, so I think it's only right that we cover that next week.
Also, blowjob robots are a thing now.
Yeah, so we should definitely cover that as well. So we'll cover all that next week in a science episode. Next review topic, though, I thought it might be good. Do you want to do the next Daimajin? Return of Daimajin?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That's what that's called. Or is it called Daimajin Strikes Again? What the fuck is the title of the second one?
Hold on. Second one is Return of Daimajin.
Great. Perfect.
Daimajin Strikes Again is one of the titles of the third movie, which is also sometimes called Wrath of Daimajin.
I think I've seen that as Wrath of Daimajin, and that's why I got confused, yeah.
Well, the Blu-ray set has it listed as Daimajin Strikes Again, so...
Okay. Well, maybe I'm crazy then. No, definitely, but reasoning,
Yeah.
So...
In this case, I think it's safe to say that you're definitely crazy.
Okay, thanks, D. I appreciate that. So we'll see you for the next 2 weeks to do those discussions, and we hope you'll stick with us. Until then, I'm Bill Worcester, a.k.a. Zazubaar.
And I am Super DM64 saying, don't spray your wife with bug spray, especially not if she's a bug.
I mean, that's just rude. And Schultz wouldn't approve because he can't see you, Colonel Hogan.